I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us to the candidate forum for the Mountain View Los Altos School District Board of Trustees. I'm Andrea Gemmett, the editor of the Mountain View Voice, and with me is education reporter Zoe Morgan. We're pleased to have 5 of the 6 candidates agreeing to participate tonight. They are incumbent Catherine Vonnegut, Theda Cornes, Esmeralda Ortiz, Jackie Tanner, and Eric Mark. Carol Ann Titus-Zambre let us know about half an hour ago that she has a family emergency and will not be able to attend. And Eric is traveling and let us know that he is doing his best to get somewhere with solid Wi-Fi so that he can join us, but that he will be late. So we're going to carry on with the crowd that we've got. And if Eric can manage to secure some Wi-Fi, we'll just slot him right in with everyone else. The mission of The Voice is to provide accurate and reliable information to the community so that you can make up your minds about the issues that impact your lives. In this forum, we aim to give you an opportunity to hear directly from candidates on key issues that will help you decide who would best represent your views on the high school district board. In order to keep things moving along, we'll have a time limit for responses, and we'll ask the candidates to wait until they are called upon to answer each question. You'll see a timer on your screen indicating how much time has been allotted. We're also going to rotate the order in which we ask candidates to respond so that everyone will have a turn giving the first answer. We're going to start tonight's forum by asking each candidate to briefly introduce themselves with 1-minute opening statements before getting into the questions. And we're going to start off in alphabetical order. So we'd like to ask Theda to go first.
Hi, I'm Theda Cornes. I have non-progressive dystonia. You may see me move around or stumble over words. That's just me. I'm running because I'm committed to ensuring that all our students feel connected, embrace challenges, and thrive. My experience as a disabled Anglo-Burmese immigrant and mother of 2 drives my decades of public service. My daughter was a high-achieving student at MVLA, and my son in MVLA special ed. I've worked in the classroom, served on PTA and site council, Mount View Westman School District Principal Tax Committee to use my business skills and my MBA, then boundaries and facilities committees. I'm most proud that we added 3 special education classrooms at no additional cost and started a mentor tutor program at my kids' school that became district-wide. I'll bring that collaborative, innovative thinking to the board. I've observed every board meeting since April. This firsthand knowledge of how the educational experience must adapt to students' needs motivates me to help every student succeed.
Thank you. All right. Next up is Esmeralda.
Good evening, everyone. I am running for the MVLA High School Board because as a first-generation Latina college graduate who attended California's K-12 public schools, I know how critical they are in determining student success. In my 10 years at Boys and Girls Club, I've dedicated my career to closing the opportunity gap and helping students access the resources and social capital necessary to prepare for their definition of success. There's 6 candidates and 3 seats, and we all bring something to the table. I specifically bring years of being on the ground floor with what it takes to get students to and through college, knowledge in developing CTE programs so that every student can succeed, empathy for those struggling with mental health at both an academic level as well as a result of refugee trauma. I bring experience in scaling programs to serve more students in holistic ways. And on a more personal note, I bring the lens of a first-gen student who grew up in a working class household and is Spanish speaking. So I thank you for listening tonight, and I look forward to serve the MVLA community.
Thank you. Next up is Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Tanner. I've been in this community for over 50 years. I've gone through this public school system as well. During this time, I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in kindergarten and went through the special ed program in through 8th grade and was tracked through the ending of high school. I am a first-generation college graduate. I'm a first-generation homeowner. I know firsthand how important it is to get a good education to bring your family up. I now have a daughter who's a Los Altos high school student, freshman, my alma mater, and I'm happily retired now. Just started retirement a few months ago. Now that I'm retired, I'm going to use my business skills and my data-driven business skills, my time and my energy to support Mountain View Los Altos High School, my daughter, and hopefully the board. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and finally, Catherine.
I think you're muted, Catherine.
Again. Hi, I'm Catherine Vonnegut, the current MVLA board president. I want to say that in addition to dealing with COVID, MVLA has actually accomplished a lot during my 4 years on the board so far. I have over 40 years volunteer experience working with schools as officer in PTAs at schools, including MVHS PTSA president for 2 years, plus city and county PTAs, school site councils, as well as Red Cross and other nonprofits. I bring experience from an award-winning software engineering career and my EMT background. I have been an IT and safety consultant to MVLA. My son graduated MVHS and now teaches high school chemistry, and he's one of my consultants. I would like to stay on the board for calm, consistent, collaborative leadership and continue my public education mission to engage the community with equity and inclusion, deliver excellent academic education, support wellness, supervise finances, and further innovation to always improve and be better.
Thank you, Catherine. All right, Zoe is going to read off our next and very first official question.
Yes, and to keep everything consistent tonight, the time limit for all of our questions is going to be 1 minute. So we're going to do 1 minute per question, and Andrea and I will take turns asking them. So first up, how can the district support the diverse academic needs of all students, from those who are academically high achieving to those who may be struggling in one or more areas? And we're going to start with Esmeralda.
Great. So I think that the district has been doing a great job at serving the students who are academically high achieving through the various course offerings, advanced course offerings, and in helping students who are looking to pursue a 4-year pathway. I think one area that could help improve the academic needs of all students is looking at the tutorial period that can really serve as a way to serve the diverse academic needs of all students, both for the high achieving students who can utilize that time to focus on time management, and then for the struggling students to have additional learning time and individual time, possibly with teachers for more practice. So I think that would be one area that we could look at to ensure that it's being used and being leveraged to its full extent.
Thank you. And next up, Jackie.
Can you repeat the question real quick? Sorry.
No problem. How can the district support the diverse academic needs of all students, from those who are academically high achieving to those who may be struggling in one or more areas?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've been doing my walking around with the tour and talking to people, and you're getting a lot of different inputs about not having too many AP classes because it's too stressful. So I want to say on two sides on this. I don't believe we should put AP limits. I think we need to have the students, the counselors, and the parents make that decision together. So we're still supporting the higher achievers without limiting them. In regards to support, I would think that we need to do more support starting at an earlier age, recognizing the kids that are coming up through through 8th grade. They don't suddenly come to their freshman year in school and start to fail. So we know that they have weaknesses, and I think that the school transition should help if we could communicate better with the counselors so the school knows they're coming, so we have the right tools to support them when they get to the schools. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And next up, Catherine.
Okay, well, for all students, we have many excellent resources already. We have college and career, we have tutorial center, we have lots of APs and honors, we have academic counselors, we have college fairs. Then for more struggling students, and the tutorial periods, which are called a different thing at the two schools. For struggling students, we have AVID classes. We have English learner classes. We have social workers. We have summer school. We have alternative programs. We have Alta Vista, which is a different kind of alternative program. We have CTE courses. We have mentor tutor connections. What we can give students more is more ways to have an adult mentor to look up to. And we also, by the way, have a very robust special education department. Mental health is always a concern for everyone, and we are working as hard as we can. And if there was a magic solution to that for all students, we would have already waved that magic wand.
Thank you. And finally, Theda.
So MVLA has the challenge of a diversity of students, from high-performing students who face a lot of academic pressures. I think and then we also have the forgotten middle, and then we have low-income students. I think for all of those students, using state career pathways to give all students the life skills and to show students that regardless of where they are, they need to choose the career path that's right for them would be helpful. I think also reducing the class size, so the promised size is around 20. This helps all students, but particularly underrepresented students. We also, as mentioned, work more closely with our K-8 districts to ensure a smoother transition to high school. And for struggling students, we need to get them in the programs of which for entering cohorts and studies. We need to assess known struggling students before the school year starts, so they get help immediately rather than waiting for them to fall behind.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to question number 2. What lessons do you see in how the district handled the challenges of the COVID-19 lockdown and remote learning? And how would you rate its efforts? This time, the first up is going to be Jackie.
I think the challenge was pretty tough for pretty much for everyone, especially the schools, not expecting it to come down. We, as a school district, as everyone, had to learn the new technology and what can be used, how to get the kids motivated to move and to stay involved. It was pretty tough. Even talking to the teachers about getting the kids to do PE. How do you do PE in a 10 by 10 room? The schools did it. They did the best they could with what they had, and hopefully it never happens again. I think we've learned a lot from it. I'm hoping that we still continue to use the tools that we've learned and the technologies that we've started using as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, the same question is Catherine. And I want to just interject here that if anybody wants the question repeated before they answer, just speak up and we'll be happy to do that for you.
Okay. MVLA did an excellent job with COVID management, if I may say so. We were calm, consistent, and collaborative as a board and with our administration and with our labor partners. That would be the teachers and classified union, to keep everybody employed, keep everybody working, give everybody, both the students and the teachers, a fast track lesson in IT and tech ed as they taught online. We updated our systems, our HVAC, and put in the screens that everybody, the plastic screens and this and that. We had a robust testing program. We did well with masking and not masking and sanitizing and so on. And we were models for many other districts that copied off of us. So I think it turned out really well, and we can collaboratively work in the future.
All right, thank you. Next up is Theda.
Could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. What lessons do you see in how the district handled the challenges of the COVID-19 lockdown and remote learning, and how would you rate its efforts?
So COVID caused huge learning loss and exacerbated the mental health crisis, which I'm sure you'll ask me about later. Remote learning is a different pedagogy or teaching style, and normally a district would roll something out this major with a pilot and then a rollout not in a few weeks. I think the district did as well as it could given that, but both caused stress for teachers. And some students did well with online learning and some did poorly. Some don't have a place to learn at home or had other issues, so lost that learning time, usually the students who are low income or in special education. Online learning is here to stay because students need to catch up with their classes if they're sick, and we need to develop specific online learning strategies and professional development for teachers for online learning and to help them recover from COVID.
Thank you. And finally, same question to Esmeralda.
Yeah, I think that the district pivoted fairly quickly to really attend the needs of the students, the families, and teachers during distance learning, specifically probably in the number one thing, providing Wi-Fi access to all students, as that was, the single most important aspect to be able to engage in distance learning. But the district also supported families with food security, daily food pickup to fulfill that basic necessity, as well as training teachers on Zoom to be able to teach remotely. We working the bell schedule to allow for the asynchronous Wednesdays that allow teachers to prepare content and balance some of the screen time for students. I think the hybrid learning is what could have been better. I think being able to split your attention as it is something difficult, and 100% of students didn't get the 100% effective instruction during that mode. And I think there's more to be done to address the lasting impact, which maybe we'll chat about later.
Okay, thank you.
And on those lasting impacts, our next question is, how has the pandemic impacted students and what lingering effects do you see? And are there any additional steps you believe the school district should take to address these issues? And first up is going to be Catherine Vonnegut.
Okay, well, as mentioned just now, learning loss being one of them. And as Theda said, not everyone suffered that. But some did. And then we tried our darndest with summer school and more English learner programs and more tutorial and more support for students that suffered the learning loss. But the bigger one is anxiety and mental health issues. And that's nationwide. That's not just MVLA, although that doesn't give us a pass that we don't have to do anything about it. And we are trying to coordinate more and more services that we've added on in terms of people and resources in a better way, so that there's a transition from knowing the students in need to the teacher working with them, the counselor working with them, a therapist working with them, groups working with them, getting them into the right environment. And so that is one of the biggest things we still have to do.
Thank you. And next up is Theda.
So COVID-19, as I mentioned, has caused learning loss and exacerbated the mental health crisis. According to MVLA's own projections, 50% of students have a mental health issue, which can range from I need to talk to a trusted adult to feel better to suicidal ideation. And according to ACL report, 70–80% of youth receive their mental health services in their schools. And the MVLA is building health and wellness centers. And we need to work in partnership with Santa Clara County, which has created 19 centers, including high school. We also need to deepen partnerships with CHAC and El Camino Health to provide better resources for students in crisis, identify more students who are having mental health issues, and also with professional development for teachers and training for mental health connection. And we also, as I mentioned, need to help teachers because teachers also had effects from COVID. And I will also add that this is personal for me because I've had family members who have dealt with severe depression with professional help.
Thank you. And next up, we're going to have Esmeralda.
So as mentioned, the impacts of the pandemic have continued well past the return to campus with surging COVID cases, staff shortages, quarantines due to illness, and obviously mental health challenges. And for those of us who've been working with students, we know that the past school year was more of a transitional year, even though it was our return to campus. And I would say that the one impact I've seen consistently across students, high school and college, has continued to be the lack of socialization, and how that really impacts the kinds of relationships students cultivate with each other as well as with the adults on campus, and really the lack of knowing how to establish those relationships that are so key to navigating the high school experience. And so I think the continuing school rituals where students can socialize through rallies, homecoming, Spartan Pause, I know has been a great program to provide more outlets for cultivating those relationships.
Thank you. And lastly, Jackie.
Great. Say the group had pretty much covered pretty much everything. Esmeralda got mine. Darn it. But one of the lasting impacts that I'm seeing is the opportunity for growth. And that's the whole socialization. The kids were stuck in their rooms or in their kitchens or where they were at. They didn't learn how to communicate face to face. And even now when we're wearing our face masks, kids are having issues with facial cues. So getting us back to the classes was a great step forward, but it's going to take a long time for the kids to get back to a new normal. Was also an impact for the teachers, the parents, and the children, just for the mental and the physical health of COVID itself. It's going to take a long time. I know we talked about the recovery of loss of education and stuff. It'll take time, but we'll get there.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question up. As the district has launched substantial construction projects in recent years, at times there's been tension with people living near the campuses. For instance, the decision to install stadium lights. If you're elected to the board, how would you balance neighbors' concerns with the district's need for these construction projects? And first up to answer is Theda.
So I think the district could involve the community more. Changing construction is expensive, so it saves money to have all input up front rather than trying to address concerns midway through or even after construction. I know this is complicated, having served on the facilities committee, but I think during the design phase, sending a postcard to all the properties affected directly by construction would be helpful. Also issuing a press release and sending it to local papers. And looking at the cost benefits of 3D mock-ups, because people can really see how our construction will look when finished. And finally, there's still an issue with fences. The school is still creating fences for neighbors. And I think when a fence is shared with a home and the school wishes to change the fence, there needs to be an agreement in writing that the owner understands the changes. So I think I'm out of time.
All right, thanks for respecting the clock. Next up on this question is Esmeralda.
So I think in balancing sort of different priorities, I think it's really important, as Theda mentioned, communication. And I think communication that is both consistent and comprehensive. And I think there's different ways to do that in order to engage the various community members. And I would say that probably the number one thing within communication is to really lead with the benefits of whatever it is that, in terms of construction, whatever will be beneficial to the students, ensuring that we are centering conversations around that and sort of the bigger benefit for the community. While also listening and trying to balance again the different priorities that various community members may have.
All right, thank you. Next up is Jackie.
So we all know that construction takes time. It's definitely, once the plans are in place, it's taking years. So it's great that we were communicating up front, but we need to do a lot more communicating throughout the entire process. Walking around talking to the families, I know that they've been told what was going on. I know that they've been informed about the schedule, but it was surprising to see how many people just didn't know what was happening today. So continuous communication about the latest process, the latest things going on, maybe doing a walk around and talking to the neighbors again to remind them what's going on. I heard some complaints about mess and noise, and they didn't have phone numbers. I know they're out there, but maybe we need to recommunicate that. Just keep reiterating what's going on. This is how we're going. This is where we're at. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And finally, same question to Catherine.
Well, anybody that's tried to communicate with people, and I know the newspaper, this too, knows that you have to use more than one method. Not the same method works on everyone. So some people read things in print, some people will go to your website, some people read your email, some people will do better with a poster on a sign near your house or whatever. So we do have to communicate more and better. And we've learned that lesson some over the last 4 years as we've communicated about different issues that we have had, the lights. And I called it at our back to school night, the cacophony of construction, because that's what it is. And it's just plain true that if you live near a school, you're going to have some of that. Not to mention the actual items, such as the lights, whether you agree with that or not. But if you're going to build more capacity for the students, such as new classrooms, it's going to take construction. Anybody that's done that at home knows it is the same kind of issues in a much, much smaller scale. But I think, as most people have said, meetings and communication, and in numerous ways, and repetitive.
Thank you.
And our next question is, various metrics of achievement and opportunity for MVLA students show disparities based on race, economic status, and disability. What is needed to address these gaps, and how would you tackle them if elected? First up, Esmeralda.
Find my mute button. So I think some of the areas, let me step back. I think more generally, having equitable grading practices is probably one of the key pieces, particularly as we look at the groups that have been achieving at different levels from the majority. And I think that's the English language learner students, as well as students with lower SES backgrounds. And so I think both equitable teaching and grading practices that consider students' unique circumstances would be one area. I think the other, probably mentioned a little bit earlier, was improving some of the transitional support provided to students and families before starting high school, so that a student and a family really understands the ecosystem of each of the high school, as well as the different supports available that can support their achievement.
Thank you. And next up is Jackie.
The achievement gap, unfortunately, made worse by the COVID situation. I would say, first and foremost, would be looking at it from the 7th and 8th graders, transitioning the kids up, identifying them earlier is better. The other area that I'd see that we could help in the achievement gap is with getting the parents more involved. I know that's really hard, it's a hard ask, but strong, active parents lead to possibly better educated children. Parents who are working huge hours, there's the potential for a gap there. So trying to get the families more involved and improving the transition for the 8th graders. Thank you.
And next up, Catherine.
Okay, I don't know that our district is going to do something like have a community school soon. There's talk around the country for doing that sort of thing, but to more integrate the services for a whole family with the campus and do this with partnerships with other agencies and so on, to have kind of an integrated services like that. Parent ed is important. Professional development for the teachers is important on how to get to deal with students. And then, as was mentioned, grading. Along with grading is homework practices. I think there doesn't need to be busy work homework. You need to train students to learn what they need to learn, and then they can stop. And then other practices in the classroom, like letting students do redos of tests or whatever based on their personal situations on why they couldn't get the work done.
Thank you. And finally, Thea.
I agree with all that's being said. I will focus on English language learners and special education, since those are the students that typically fall into the achievement gap. You can be marked in proficient in English, but still be behind in grade level. The state requires districts to track them for 4 years after they become proficient, but you should make sure they're still performing at grade level. And MVLA has an influx of ELL immigrants who are in special education. They're at the lowest level of English proficiency, or unaccompanied minors who fled COVID-19 and are now living with a foster family. We need to figure out how to meet their needs. We need to ensure the issues raised by Spanish-speaking parents in a letter to the board are being addressed. Increase enrollment by the parenting class for Spanish-speaking parents, developed by Spanish-speaking parents. And finally, provide professional development for teachers to help Spanish-speaking families and special education students in the classrooms.
Thank you.
All right, I've got the next question. As a high school district, 2 K-8 districts, Mountain View, Wisman, and Los Altos, feed into MVLA. How would you describe the current status of MVLA's relationship with these districts? And what, if any, changes do you believe should be made to how the districts work together? First person to tackle this question is Jackie.
So I've had the opportunity to talk to the feeder schools. And at first I thought there wasn't a lot of good communication, but I have been informed that there is at different levels. The staff work with the staff. The superintendents are talking to each other as well. So they are working fairly well together, but I feel that we should still be able to have more communication going on back and forth, and having it being open to the public, to see the public to know that they're communicating with the feeder schools, so that it's transparent is the word I'm for. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Next up is Catherine.
Well, the administrations have very good relationships with each other, both in the academic services and other services, as well as the boards know each other very well. And we work well together. I think some of the actual teachers and instructional teams could benefit by spending more time with each other and share the scores and where the gaps are and so on, so that we can work on closing those between K-8 and the high school. And we have done some things like Just Read and Mentor Tutor Connections and so on have been pushed down to the middle schools from the high schools, or vice versa, to kind of have a program that bridges both. But more needs to certainly be done in that area. And I think that the parents can help a lot too, in groups like the PTAs and so on, to encourage shared parent ed and that sort of thing.
All right, thank you. Same question now to Theda.
Hi, well, I went after Catherine, so I agree with what Catherine said. What I also say is that we have 2 different districts, and that in itself creates issues because they have slightly different practices. They do things slightly differently. And we have a disparity between the money spent per student for each district, which is an inherent part of those 2 districts. And that creates problems for the high school. which are hard to resolve. And I think, as mentioned, if staff can work more closely together and recognize that those are the issues and really try to make the transition smoother and try to make it not such a leap, especially for low income and special ed students, it can really become a barrier because the demands for high school are much higher than in any 8th grade.
Thank you. All right, finally, let's hear from Esmeralda on this question.
Yeah, in talking to current trustees from really all 3 of the districts, I think there is some level of communication and there has been collaboration around trying to help families prepare for that transition from middle school to high school. I think there's opportunities to improve some of those efforts, particularly as we communicate with families around math sequencing. This is a big factor information that families really need to know early on in order for students to really take advantage of their first couple of years in high school. We know Algebra 2 is often a gatekeeper for certain post-secondary pathways. And so ensuring that all students and families have the necessary information even before high school is a critical piece of this. And I think particularly within math. So more opportunities to improve in that aspect.
Thank you all. The next question. The district is offering an ethnic studies course as an elective this school year with plans to expand it to a required course next fall. That's ahead of a state requirement that will take effect in the 2025 to 2026 school year. What is your perspective on the course that the district is piloting and what changes, if any, would you want to see made? And we're going to start off with Catherine.
Well, I don't know what changes would need to be made necessarily because this, as you say, is a pilot and we're reviewing it as we go. It is way more of a constructive approach than others kinds of ethnic studies, and we did not like the state framework as well, so we made our own, and the board has approved that, and now they're teaching to that this year, and we will have several study sessions as a board, and the course teams will be having sessions, and there will be feedback from parents and students on how it's going, and that's how we will decide how to proceed. But I think our framework will remain fairly the same.
Thank you. And next up is Theta.
I agree with the framework. Also, it is pilot there, but there was double the student interest in the pilot phase. I agree with the purpose of the course to create empathy, connection, and solidarity among students of all backgrounds, and to develop academic skills, including critical thinking, writing, reading, research, and public speaking, and civic engagement skills. A dedicated team of teachers has spent over a year developing the course, and the controversy about ethnic studies at the state level will be covered in the course. I agree with the thematic approach, as Catherine mentioned, rather than dividing the course up by individual groups. I think this helps students explore connections and develop solidarity. The students are supposed to learn how to participate thoughtfully and in an informed way in civic discourse and in our democracy with empathy and respect. And students of all backgrounds explore their own identity and learn how to pursue actions of change in solidarity with others through civic engagement. I think it's important to use primary sources written by people about themselves rather than people writing about others. That is my only comment so far.
Thank you. And next up, we're going to have Esmeralda.
Yes, I agree with Catherine in terms of changes. It's something I look forward to hearing about depending on how the pilot goes this year. I am confident that in terms of how the pilot came to be, confident in Dr. Julie Yick's approach along with others who've engaged in the conversation. I'm confident that the pilot has been informed by multiple perspectives, ranging from teachers to former students. And I think that it really will allow many students to engage in complex topics and issues and discourse that often too few students get to engage in at the college level. And so from an exposure standpoint, there's huge benefit in students being able to engage in the kinds of conversations they're in. And I also think that from an exposure standpoint, it allows many students to explore other fields and interests.
Thank you. And finally, Jackie.
So it is a pilot program, and I sort of don't like the idea that we're experimenting on our children, but at least we were able to, our school district, develop a well thought out program that sounds pretty good so far. The one thing that I could only say on this would be that we only offered it to the freshmen, and although we've talked about this before, it needs to be offered up to the other grade levels. So the juniors and the seniors, or the seniors don't get it, but the juniors will have an opportunity to get it next year if it was available. So I would like it to be offered as an option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next question. We've noticed in covering education over the years that some school board members are very hands-on with the district's day-to-day operations, while other school board members prefer to delegate the lion's share of the responsibility to the administrators. So we'd like to ask each of you where on the spectrum you think you would fall, or for our incumbent, do fall. And Theda is going to be the first to answer this one.
Well, gosh, well, I'm a policy wonk, so I like to do my research, but I also recognize, and I've met with the superintendent, and I really respect her. I think she's very knowledgeable, very inclusive, and she is actually the person who deals with the day-to-day operations of the school, of all the schools and all the staff. So I think what I would be doing as a trustee, if elected, is looking at policy questions and working with the superintendent and the teachers and asking them questions that are based on the feedback that I get from all the stakeholders, including students, parents, teachers, and community members, to try to bring some of that outside perspective. Because I think if you're working within the school, you only have that perspective. So I think I hope bring balance, and really my goal is to really listen to all inputs. And I do think it's my my job actually to incorporate everyone's feedback.
Thank you. Next up is Esmeralda.
Yeah, so in terms of how I would engage and specifically with the district, I would be, there's three really areas I think that I would offer. One is ensuring that we're representing diverse perspectives, ranging from different parent groups to teachers to students. And then there's diversity within those groups. And the other big piece would probably be to thought partner. As someone who is working with high school students and college students in the day-to-day, I could offer pretty strong thought partnership as we think about how to best serve students. And I think the third piece would be asking critical questions to really push our thinking and our vision for what needs to be true for students.
All right, thank you. Next, same question goes to Jackie.
Okay, so I'm a big policy and procedure type person, being in the business world, and I'm very data oriented, data driven. So I've been looking at the packets, and I believe that I would be very hands-on, going through as much of the data as possible, verifying what's there. I also believe in listening. So I would be listening to the constituents and the students, just making sure that I'm representing everyone, not just what my thoughts are. I believe we should all work well as a team, but that doesn't mean we have to agree. And I will be asking the hard questions. I don't believe in the status quo. If I see something strange, I'm going to say something. So that's how I plan on performing on the board.
All right, thank you. And finally, let's hear from Catherine on this question.
Okay, well, The job of a board is to give general direction, set policy. And then it's the superintendent's job to implement that through her team. The superintendent is actually our only employee. Everybody else works for somebody lower down. No, I won't say lower, differently in the structure. I feel hands-on though. I like to know what's going on everywhere. My son's a teacher. I go, I hear this. What do you think? And one of my best friends, Judy Crates, is a known local educator, and she's been a principal zillions of times. I get her advice on how principals think about things. And my sister's a mental health professional. I get advice from them. I like to bring all those thoughts together, and then I would like to advocate both to the administration and with the board on things I think should happen. And I like to do it in a roundtable kind of a study session kind of method. I'd like to hear from everybody. I like to innovate. I like to see what's gonna happen.
Thank you.
Next up, on a different topic, district enrollment has been increasing in recent years, but since the onset of the pandemic, it has held steady at around 4,500 students. As more housing is built in the district, projections suggest that enrollment will increase, potentially by a substantial amount. There have been discussions about the potential need for a new high school, but the high cost to purchase new land will likely pose a challenge. If elected, how would you approach the issue of accommodating potential future enrollment growth? And first up is going to be Esmeralda.
Sorry, Zoe, can you repeat the last part of your question?
Sure, I'll just repeat the whole thing. District enrollment has been increasing in recent years, but since the onset of the pandemic, it has held steady at around 4,500 students. As more housing is built in the district, projections suggest that enrollment will increase, potentially by a substantial amount. There have been discussions about the potential need to add a new high school, but the high cost to purchase land will likely pose a challenge. If elected, how would you approach the issue of accommodating this potential future enrollment growth?
Thank you. So I don't think it's a surprise to any of us that a third high school has been in the conversation due to the projected student growth that you mentioned, and the current construction, though 75% complete, is to accommodate the current student population and the current needs of the district. And so what I think all of this will require is more communication with our city council and the ability to build and cultivate very key relationships because of, as you mentioned, the high cost of land, and to really be able to assess where it is that another high school should be located. And I'm not sure of where the conversations have been currently with the district, but I'm sure that they have started.
Thank you. And next up, Jackie.
So as a board member, we would need to make sure that we are supporting what the kids, the staff, and the teachers and the parents are all need. We can't work directly with the city. That's going to have to come from the superintendents. The infrastructure that needs to happen with the city, that's also going to need to happen through the superintendent. We can make suggestions and recommendations for her, but I think my main goal would be to make sure we're communicating, listening to our constituents, and making sure that the superintendent knows what we want as a board.
Thank you. And next up is Catherine.
Well, I beg to differ that it's up to the superintendent, because negotiations and the signature of any and all contracts, even to the littlest thing, is responsibility of the board. So we have to work in a partnership with the administration to come up with what we want them to present forward, and then we have to sign the contract when they end up providing that to us. But I think that we absolutely definitely need a new school, and we do need to partner, as all these other folks have said. I think that one other issue that will come up, or one other situation, is what kind of school it is, and whether we're going to have a very urbanish school, or we're going to have a more like we have now, full comprehensive high school or whatever. And cost of land is one of the issues there, of course, and so on. So we have to kind of like two decisions to make at once.
Thank you. And finally, Theda.
So I know from serving on the facilities committee that this is a complex issue. So these are my preliminary thoughts. The board has already begun negotiations, as far as I know, to build a third high school. I don't know the details because the negotiations are, of course, closed session. As far as negotiations go, I have relationships with city council and large businesses due to my decades of community service, including with the Chamber of Commerce. We need to have a strategic plan and a budget that incorporates the rising costs of construction, because building takes time and there can be unexpected delays. I need a lot more community input and understanding of the negotiation to say more than I'm open to another smaller high school that has a particular specialty or serve a particular population. And if it's a regular high school, for equity, it need to have all the facilities of the other two high schools, which is a big ask. But if that's what's needed, I will do my best.
All right, thank you. We're on to the next question. How well do you think the district is doing to ensure that students and staff feel safe and included on school campuses, regardless of their race, gender, sexuality, family income, or other factors? And please describe any additional steps you think are needed. First, answering this question will be Jackie.
Just a second. I know I had this earlier, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question then?
Sure. The question is, how well do you think the district is doing to ensure that students and staff feel safe and included on school campuses, regardless of their race, gender, sexuality, family income, or other factors? And please describe any additional steps you might think are needed.
I'm not gonna be able to answer that right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, Jackie's taking a pass on this one. Next up is Catherine.
Well, I think safety comes in physical, and then it also comes in mental and thinking. In terms of safety for everybody, physically, we have installed new HVAC systems and so on, and new structures, and we're remodeling to make the actual facility safe. The gender neutral bathrooms are being installed, and others will be upgraded to such. We have free lunch, which is great for an equity situation for students. We have 4 times more students having lunch on campus than used to, because it doesn't matter whether you can afford it or not, and you aren't called out for people knowing you are on free and reduced lunch. We have a real strong push for equity with the staff for staff development. We have meetings. We've had meetings maybe once a month for that. Did the timer already go off on me?
Yep, that was a minute.
Oh, really? Well, then I guess I didn't get to say much.
All right, next up is Theda.
So I think, as mentioned, the gender neutral bathrooms are really important. I also think policies to help students feel more connected to the school. I think there's this big club rush at the beginning, but then afterwards, there isn't an ongoing effort to make sure all students feel included. I've also heard about hate speech graffiti at the schools. And I think when that occurs, there should be a school-wide response to it rather than just painting over the graffiti. I also think with the mental health and wellness centers, I think it's really important that all students feel really comfortable going to them to de-stress and unwind with things like therapy dogs and yoga and other things that the students really enjoy doing. And then I also think it's important to be culturally sensitive and to make sure that the teachers have professional development in unconscious bias.
All right, thank you. Last up is Esmeralda.
So I think Catherine touched on safety from a physical standpoint for students and staff. So I'll speak more to the piece around inclusion, because that's really around safety as we think about social emotional safety for both students and staff. And I think continuing to support programs like Spartan Pause and really any programs that promote community building and student wellness should continue to be supported. I think the piloting of ethnic studies is actually a key piece to raising awareness and inclusivity, both among students and staff. And I think continuing to provide funding for programs that maybe don't require more under-resourced students to need fee waivers can create a more inclusive campus. And then I think more generally, trying to make decisions from a diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging lens is critical.
Thank you all. Next question is, the high cost of living and housing in particular has consistently been raised as a challenge for local teachers and other school staff. As schools have reopened, districts throughout the region have faced increased difficulty finding staff and substitute teachers. What steps should the school board take to help attract and retain high quality teachers and staff? And first up is Catherine.
Well, we actually don't have too much trouble getting high quality teachers. We pay the best in the state of California, and we just negotiated a 3-year, 5% per year increase. The first that's been done in any time anybody remembers in this district. It's the housing that is the hardest. And we are coordinating some with the county, like Joe Simidian and his group that are trying to put some housing together, projects together for teachers and so on. It's just it is a really hard problem to deal with the housing part. The other good thing that we already do for our teachers is we have full benefits, full medical, dental, vision benefits. My son's a teacher in the East Bay. He gets none of that. He gets a prorated price for all these things, but he has to pay out for those. So I think that we've done it on the salary side.
Thank you.
But I don't know about the housing.
Thank you. And next up is Sita.
So I agree that in terms of salary, we're paying top dollar, but I would just say in general, teachers are not paid enough. California rates among the lowest in what they pay for education. I've talked to a variety of teachers and also worked in the classroom, including advocating for beginning teachers, which began as a pilot in my kid's school and then became a district-wide policy. And it's important that the district give to support the beginning teacher support and assessment program. And I'm excited that BTSA asked beginning teachers to pick subcategories of California's teacher standards. I support professional development that predominantly relies on teams of teachers. And I think that sort of thing makes teachers stay because they feel they're progressing. And the board also has an amicable relationship with teachers and staff, which I continue. And I think it's important to keep communications respectful. As far as housing, I would need a lot more information on the cost.
Thank you. And next up is Esmeralda.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Catherine mentioned. MVLA is the highest paying district for teachers. And I think housing is still, I think, an important topic to talk about because of how expensive it is to live in our area. And so I think I'm glad that there's been conversations with the county, with Supervisor Simidian, and some work being done in that area, because I think that's that even with, being paid as much as teachers are, it's not enough to be able to live in the area. I also think other ways for retaining teachers, though I know retention is high with MVLA, is continuing to provide the technology and tools necessary. I think professional development time that doesn't cut into instruction time.
Thank you. And finally, Jackie.
I was going to say, Mountain View Los Altos has a really good retention rate. So it's housing right now for us is not an issue, and pay and good benefits and education is good to keep all these people here. So what we're looking at maybe is Mountain View Wisman worked out a way of getting some housing that they're working on off the shoreline. So although it's not an issue for us now, MVLA we should still continue to look for ways to come up with a solution. It's good to keep the community and the county involved, but it could be an issue in the future. It's going to be an issue in the future. So we got to find a way to house them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. In recent years, increased focus has been paid to the issues of student stress and mental health, concerns that were exacerbated by the pandemic. If elected to the school board, what additional steps would you take to address student wellness? First up to tackle this question is Theda.
Well, as I've mentioned before, this is something that's my #1 priority. MVLA is building mental health and wellness centers, and we need to work in partnership with Santa Clara County, which has created 19 centers, including high school. I visited the one at Castor, which is an elementary school, and I was just really impressed by how it was a place where anyone would want to go to relax and de-stress. And I think helping students understand that mental health is something that they need to take care of just as they take care of their physical health, I think would be really helpful. I think as I mentioned, we need to deepen partnerships with CHAC and El Camino and Health and other partners to provide better resources for students in crisis and identify more students who are having mental health issues. We also need professional development for teachers who are often our first line, and training for mental tutor connection. And mental health also affects academics. So I think this is a crucial issue that we need to be looking at as a district.
Thank you. Next is Esmeralda.
Yes, I think this is continues to be a priority for many, and I think the district has done a lot, particularly this last year with all their wellness initiatives. And I think one of the key pieces probably where we've made the most progress is destigmatizing mental health and normalizing reaching out for services. I think one area we could improve on is more of the preventative education that we provide to students, to teachers, to educators, so that we can prevent students from going into crisis. I think that's the more sustainable approach for long-term wellness of all students. And I think continuing partnerships with CHAC and ensuring that there is access to those more individualized and group services on campus is important. And I think, well, I'll pause there. I have many other thoughts, but time's up.
Thank you. All right, next is Jackie.
Right. I think the key thing we all were saying here is more. We need more education for the teachers and more resources for them to be able to see firsthand what's going on in school and raise awareness to the kids that they're seeing issues. We need to have more counselors, and that's really hard to do because there's not. We have the therapists and the counselors that are out there available, just they're limited. So we need just more counselors, more education, more training for the teachers. Yeah, sorry. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And finally, let's hear from Catherine. You're muted, Catherine.
Sorry,
That's-
I do that all the time.
There we go. All right, we
Anyway.
restarted the clock.
Anyway, we have put many pieces in place over the last 4 years, a wellness coordinator, more therapists, social workers, and so on. What I feel is I would like to understand the roadmap of how they all flow together and who does what when, and a continuum of how a child is identified through professional development from the teachers, knowing to identify them, and then through the system, if you will, and then referred to outside providers or provided the services that they need. And for that, the providers, we need the partners like Jack and others, and community health services elsewhere. And we need to look more into the group possibilities, because you can serve maybe more than one child at a time. And then of course, communicate. What our services are, and with the parents, and about the child to everybody involved.
Thank you. And we're now going to get to our final question of the forum before we do closing statements, which is, parents and community members often provide input to the school board on a range of matters, everything from curriculum priorities to student mental health, like we were just talking about. And they often hold divergent philosophies and perspectives. Talk to us about how much influence parents should have in school matters, and how the board should take this input into account. First is going to be Esmeralda.
So parents are an important partner in obviously in the education of students. And so I think all parents need to be, we need to listen to all parent perspectives and represent those perspectives as divergent or as similar as they may be to various board members. Make sure that they're part of the conversation and part of the needed decisions. And I think ensuring that when we are representing various parent perspectives, that they are diverse and broad, and that we are doing enough outreach to parents to ensure that we're really representing parents of all students, because perspectives vary so much and needs vary so much. And so they're an important part of the conversation. And so we need to listen.
Thank you. And next up is Jackie.
Parents should be heard. My answers to how something should be done is certainly going to be different from my next door neighbor. And that's what makes California, that's what makes America. We have all these different opinions, and we should all be able to at least hear them. That doesn't mean we have to do what they say, but to be able to take that as a board member and hear all of that and come up with a communicative response to it is key. So listen, communicate, listen some more. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Catherine.
See, I did not turn off my mute, so then I'm my mute. So anyway, so input, always take input from everybody. And then I think I at least try to sort and categorize it into areas, and then knowing that I know confidential information that can't be shared with the public, plus I and staff have history and research that we have gone into before that know some background to things, and we know best practices, or we can look up best practices. Then we have to decide based on that, what is best for our students first, best for our students first, best for our staff, and the district.
Sorry, my computer was freezing at an inopportune time. Last up is Theta.
Okay.
I agree, it's important to get input of parents, including every parent actually, and I think we should need to broaden our outreach to reach all parents. I think parents are particularly care a lot because it's their child that's in the school, and we need to make sure that we're meeting students' needs, because after all, that is what a school is about, is meeting teachers' needs and also helping teachers meet students' needs. I also think, there are many different perspectives, and the way I look at it is, I listen to everyone, and as Catherine has said, there's privileged knowledge. There's also knowledge that I've researched myself, and I'm happy to discuss with any parent who wants to talk to me about what my decision is, or if it's not privileged information, what's happening on the board. And I think more conversations like that are good for the district.
Thank you.
All right, we've hit closing statements. Each candidate will get 1 minute to give closing remarks, and the first one up is going to be Jackie.
Okay. Well, I'm obviously new to public office, which means I also have no special interests. From a fresh, independent perspective, I'm newly retired, which means I have the time to devote to my daughter, to Los Altos High School, and hopefully to the board. I'm here and I'm listening, and I have been listening for a while. I'm not here for a short-term little burst of 4 years, but since I'm young, I can be here for 8, 12 years, as long as the public is willing. If you want more information, you can look me up on Jackie Tanner, the number 4, MVLA.org. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up for closing remarks is Catherine.
Hi, well, I would like to stay on the board for 4 more years. I feel that we've been a calm, consistent, and collaborative board, and our leadership has gotten us through COVID and gotten many other things done. And my mission for public education, I really believe in public education, as I said, is to engage the community with equity and inclusion. These are important words. Deliver excellent academic education, support wellness of all students, staff, and families, to provide the finances and other assets, lead implementation of new programs, and further innovate to always improve and be better. Look me up on vonne.org, Vonne.org, and there's way longer answers to most all the questions these guys have asked on there, or we've written those answers out for them for the voice in advance of this meeting too, some of them with way more detail. 1 minute isn't enough. I must talk slow. Thank you. And I hope for your vote.
All right, thank you. Next up is Theda.
Thanks to those watching for your time and to The Voice. My decades of community service for students and youth, including school district committees, my work in the classroom and for teachers, my business experience, my MBA, and my relationship with MBA's partners mean I'd immediately work on my priorities of mental health and wellness, academic achievement of all students, regardless of background, and fiscal responsibility and transparency. I went on a listening tour before I ran and met with many of the constituency at MVLA. I consider fostering close partnerships and understanding everyone's needs an important part of being an elected official. I'm honored by the endorsements of Congressman Anna Eshoo, State Senator Josh Becker, State Assembly Member Mark Berman, school board members, and city council members, and other leaders and teachers in our community. I'd love to hear from you. Please go to www.theta4mbla.com for more information. I'm number 2 on your ballot. I'd be honored to have your vote.
All right, thank you. And finally, Esmeralda's up.
Thank you. Want to thank the Mountain View Voice for tonight's platform, and to my fellow candidates and all those that are listening for your time. I understand the immense responsibility of being well informed when setting a vision for our students and doing the needed work to become better informed. And as such, I've engaged in conversation with current and former MVLA trustees, administration, teachers, parents, students, city council, K-8 district trustees, and community members. Their confidence in my ability to serve the MVLA community is reflected in the endorsements received, and I encourage you to visit my website to learn more at ortiz4mvla.com. My work and professional experiences have taught me that success is collaborative and education is generational. And it is through our collaborative work that we can achieve the generational success we want for all our students. And I look forward to continuing to uphold this life mission as I serve the MVLA community. And I'd be honored to have your vote. And thank you again for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight, and especially thank you to the 4 candidates who were able to participate this evening. Mountain View is really fortunate to have so many civic-minded residents who are willing to devote their time and energy to making the district a better place. You can find our continuing coverage of the November 8th election on our website, mv-voice.com, where you can also sign up for our Daily Express newsletter. A recording of this forum will be available tomorrow on the Voice's YouTube channel, which is at mv-voice.com/YouTube. Thank you again for joining us, and good night.
Thank you.